Here's a guy who responds to bad atheist arguments with even worse rebuttals.
So we have the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Okay, yeah, I have the Easter Bunny.
Okay, what is the data for the Easter Bunny?
I don't know. So what are you saying is your evidence?
We have multiple eyewitness attestation, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are not eyewitness attestations. We don't know who wrote those Gospels. They were anonymous. The bishops Irenaeus and Papias inferred that the Gospels were written by those followers of Jesus, but they were written in pretty sophisticated Greek, despite the fact that these apostles would have spoken Aramaic, and would have been unlikely to have been that literate given that their vocations would not have required such an education. Apologists commonly respond to this fact by saying that they could have had scribes write their stories down for them, or they could have learned to read and write Greek later in life. But that's one of many cases of apologists favoring a possible explanation that leads to their presupposed conclusion over the most probable explanation.
Peter, Paul, James.
The epistles of Peter claim to have been written by Peter, but they also have the problem of being written in sophisticated, highly literate Greek, while Peter would have spoken Aramaic and was a fisherman who would not have needed to learn to write at all, let alone in another language. The epistle of James has the same problem. Paul was literate in Greek, but he was not an eyewitness to anything Jesus said or did. The book of Acts said that Paul, on his way to Damascus, saw a light and heard a voice that claimed to be Jesus. He didn't see Jesus. That's some exceptionally weak evidence that a guy came back from the dead.
We have extra biblical. This would be like Pliny the Younger, Josephus, Tacitus, and according to Gary Habermas, we have 50 plus writings.
These were all writings by historians who were simply repeating what other people told them about Jesus. Those are not eyewitness attestations. Their accounts are hearsay.
These in history are an astronomical amount of information, considering that the earliest writing that we have of somebody else in history would be like Homer.
It might be a lot of information, but the volume of information says nothing about the reliability of that information. And I don't know if you want to use Homer as a basis of comparison, given that Homer's existence is much more debated than Jesus's. The works attributed to him show many signs of having been oral traditions to which many people contributed rather than works by any single author.
There's about a 900-year span between the first thing that we find from him and the actual writing of it. Within the Gospels, we have about a 25-year span.
Well, certainly no embellishment could occur in a story that's been passed around orally for 25 years before anyone wrote them down.
We have enemy attestation. This would be like Paul and James, right? These would be people that went against them.
Paul didn't see Jesus, and the Epistle of James is unlikely to have been written by James.
Claims are evidence, and when we're talking about history, this is astronomical.
Claims are the weakest form of evidence, and hearsay claims, which is what the New Testament stories about the resurrection are the least reliable claims. If you want me to believe that somebody rose from the dead, you're going to have to do a lot better than hearsay, even an astronomical amount of hearsay.
So we have, for example, Anthony Flew, who's an atheist philosopher, who said the most attested miracle in history, and if anything was ever going to convince him that God existed, be the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ.
That's very silly. Even if you could show that Jesus died and came back to life, it would not logically follow that he was therefore God, or that there even is a God. I guess I have to show that Hitchens clip again.
Parthenogenesis is not completely unthinkable, but it does not prove that his paternity is divine. And it wouldn't prove that any of his moral teachings were thereby correct. Nor, if I was to see him executed one day and see him walking the streets the next, would that show that his father was God, or his mother was a virgin, or that his teachings were true, especially given the commonplace nature of resurrection at that time and place. After all, Lazarus was raised, never said a word about it. The daughter of Jairus was raised, didn't say a thing about what she'd been through. And the Gospels tell us that at the time of the crucifixion, all the graves in Jerusalem opened and their occupants wandered around the streets to greet. So that it seems the resurrection was something of a banality at the time. Not all of those people clearly were divinely conceived. So I'll give you all the miracles and you'll still be left exactly where you are now, holding an empty sack.
So ridiculous.
Wow, phenomenal argument, man. That was a really good rebuttal. I was really impressive. I was really surprised there. Hello, how are you? And just real quick, how old are you?
I'm 52.
What's up, bro?
Well, you said, what is extraordinary evidence?
Yes.
It would be supernatural evidence would be extraordinary evidence. Evidence of the supernatural would be extraordinary.
I don't know what would constitute evidence of the supernatural because I don't know what the supernatural is even supposed to be.
So what is supernatural evidence?
Something that would be a miracle as claimed in the Bible.
Let's say that we saw something that defied a law of physics. Would that be evidence of a supernatural miracle? I don't think it would. Scientists have seen phenomena that defy laws of physics before. They don't declare them to be miracles. They revise the laws to accommodate the new evidence. That's what happened to the law of conservation of parity. Scientists demonstrated that it didn't apply as broadly as was originally thought, so they narrowed the definition of that law. They didn't claim to have seen a miracle. Even if we could show conclusively that a person recovered from brain death, the most reasonable response would be to revise our beliefs about how the brain works. It wouldn't be to declare that a miracle occurred.
Right. So what is supernatural evidence? Because if you're just going to say supernatural evidence, well, then we have the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Therefore, we have supernatural evidence. So we have extraordinary evidence.
The only evidence that Jesus was resurrected is hearsay. That's the opposite of extraordinary evidence. And even if we could directly see someone coming back from the dead with our own eyes and confirm it medically, I still don't understand what it would mean for that to be supernatural. The simplest explanation would be that there is some heretofore undiscovered natural mechanism.
Oh, we don't have it. We have a written word of it.
So then what is supernatural evidence?
It'd be an event. It'd be something that would show that supernatural things could occur.
So we have the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Again, even if we could conclusively demonstrate that this happened, it's not clear what it would even mean to say that this is supernatural.
Okay, yeah, I have the Easter Bunny.
Okay, what is the data for the Easter Bunny?
I don't know.
Well, then I don't believe
He's
you.
invisible. He's a giant. Yeah, anyone could say that something happened a long time ago and then say that's true, that it happened.
Yeah, they could. Yeah, 100%.
So what does that prove?
It doesn't.
Not only does it not prove anything, it isn't even remotely compelling evidence of anything.
Yeah, it just proves that people said something a long time ago.
Yeah, so again, what is supernatural evidence?
Would be evidence of something that
Give
occurred.
me an example.
I don't know. God speaking from the sky would be supernatural evidence.
How? My understanding of the supernatural is that it's somehow non-physical, but hearing a sound, which is a physical phenomenon, coming from the sky, a physical place, wouldn't fit that bill.
So if right now God spoke from the sky and you heard it, right? And 50 years from now, does that still count as evidence?
It wouldn't count as evidence of the supernatural if it happened 5 minutes ago, let alone 50 years. And if all we have after 50 years is a story about it that was passed around orally before it was written down, we have the weakest possible form of evidence that it happened at all, let alone that it was a supernatural event.
Yes, it would.
Okay.
I probably have video evidence of it.
Right. Can you do CGI with video?
Yeah, you could.
Okay.
There's many ways you could falsify evidence.
Cool.
And it's easy to
So
falsify something.
so then why should I trust your video?
I think that's the whole point. It's even easier to edit a story that's passed around orally than to edit a video. You can even alter a story accidentally. That's why it could never convince me that something as seemingly impossible as a person returning from the dead actually happened.
You're right. So why should I trust your written word?
Well, that's not what we're going to do here, right? Because you're coming up here and saying this is the standard.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought.
This is the standard.
So your written word is no more valid than my video.
Oh my God. I'm trying to show you the problem with your epistemology.
Both of these guys seem to think that extraordinary evidence means evidence of the supernatural, regardless of how weak that evidence is. Typically, extraordinary evidence means extraordinarily strong evidence. There is certainly no extraordinarily strong evidence of the supernatural. Extraordinarily strong evidence would be evidence that is easy to demonstrate with an experiment that could be easily repeated, and whose results can be clearly measured. If Jesus comes back and we crucify him again, examine his brain to make sure he's really dead, and he comes back again after 3 days, that would be extraordinary evidence that he can really come back to life. However, it still wouldn't be evidence of the supernatural because it's not clear what that would even mean.
Geez, has anyone else resurrected?
Yeah, Craig.
Anyone that you know of?
Yeah, Craig Keener has 80 accounts of resurrections.
Which is why it doesn't make sense to use resurrection as evidence of Jesus' divinity. I'm not saying that John here is saying that Jesus' resurrection is evidence that he's God, but with respect to the apologists who do argue that, one wonders why they don't see the other resurrected people the Bible talks about as being God incarnate.
Okay, so then whatever you say that Jesus did is nothing special, right?
So your whole argument is Jesus is the only one that resurrected, so therefore it's not true. And then I give you other attestations of other resurrections, so therefore it's not special.
No. So your argument
so it's
is
it's a self-fulfilling.
Jesus did it. No, it's special because Jesus did it.
It's
but then 80 other people did it, right?
It's a self-fulfilling argument.
It's a self-fulfilling argument?
Wait, let me understand this. So, because Jesus did it, he's special.
Yes.
But 88 other people did it, and they're not special.
Those 80 people, they didn't do it.
How do you know that Jesus did it when he came back to life? In Romans 10:9, Paul says, "Believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead." It's only many years later that the Gospel of John implies that Jesus raised himself from the dead. John is the only gospel that portrays Jesus as explicitly claiming to be God, which Bart Ehrman points out is very suspicious, because if Jesus really said that he's God, why didn't the earlier gospel authors think that was worth mentioning? To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.